Alright, guys. What's up? What's up? What's up? Happy Halloween. Alright. I wanted to record an episode, a second episode, about a Halloween story that I have that's real. Again, I don't think this one has a trigger warning on it. It's probably just as mysterious and scary as the previous story. I'd rate it mild. Um, I've told this story before, I think multiple times, but um, it's a good Halloween story because it's directly related to Halloween. And I think it's the most suitable story for this podcast specifically. So here we go. I must have been at least 18. I don't know exactly how old I was, but I must have been at least 18 because I think I had a car by this point. But I was still attending this youth group that now, quite a few of us were in our early college phases or beginning college years, and we were at the local community college. And, um, so we would go to this youth pastor's house pretty often, and it was every Friday night. And we'd been going to this guy's house all throughout high school pretty much. And we enjoyed being together. We had a lot of fun. Sometimes there was pizza, chips, popcorn, whatever kind of snacks, sodas. Um, and we'd usually have a Friday night type of a Vespers where it was a discussion. Now, a couple years before, or a year before that, I I think I'd been to Knott's Scary Farm. So anyone who knows Knott's Berry Farm, you probably know that um, every time near Halloween they do this event called Knott's Scary Farm, where they turn the park into some horror-looking theme, and it's creepy, and there's like scary people jumping out at you and everything. Now, I've been before with some friends from sports league, from soccer. It was a group of Latino friends that, we all got tickets. We went together. We mostly played soccer together. And we didn't really go to a whole lot of events together, but this was probably one of the few events that we went to that was bigger. I don't know how we got there, but this was like a year or two before this. And I feel like I went another time before this too, but I don't remember the details. So I'd been at least once, if not twice, before. And at this time in my life, I was in college, as were my other friends, and, we were looking to, um, go and go to Not Scary Farm. So, the youth pastor's daughter got tickets to Not Scary Farm. And then, because she got tickets, a handful of us also got tickets. And this was the Friday night before Halloween. I don't remember when Halloween was going to be. I think Halloween was on a Saturday this year, the year that this was happening. I'm pretty sure because we were going to go to church the next day, which was Saturday. Then after church, we were going to go to Not Scary Farm. So Halloween, I'm pretty sure, was on a Saturday. Um, Now at this youth group meeting, we're there, and this is Friday night, the night before the event. And so we're kind of talking about, oh, like, we're going to go to Not Scary Farm. It's going to be fun. And, like, I don't know if we were figuring out the carpool or, like, what was going to happen. Like, those of you who know LA and Orange County, it's very common for people to carpool when you're all going. Like, we all lived in the same, relatively in the same 15-minute radius driving distance from this youth pastor's house. So it wouldn't have been hard for us to all just like meet up and carpool. And we were used to carpooling when we snowboard or when we'd go to concerts or whatever. We would always kind of carpool. And I don't know if at this point we'd had it set up or not. I can't remember. All I remember is the youth pastor's daughter, who is the same age as me. She was like, I'm not going to be able to go. I'm not allowed to go because my dad's not letting me. The youth pastor wasn't letting her. And, those of us who had bought tickets, these were like $35, $45 tickets, kind of expensive for when you're like 18 or so. We were like, dang, she can't go. That sucks that she can't go. I don't remember if her brother was giving us a ride. I don't remember what was going on. I because I think at this point the rest of us all had cars. I feel like when I was 18, I only knew like two people who didn't really have cars, and we all lived close together. So whenever we wanted to drive and hang out, we would pick each other up and stuff, and so it wasn't that hard to really like get around. So I remember, um, you know, it was either her or her brother that was going to give us a ride, or me who was going to give us a ride, or my other friend who used to drive the mom's car, or one of my other friends who had a car, um, or this other guy who was a different denomination, but he had a car. Usually it was one of us that was going to drive. And so it wouldn't have been an issue. It probably would have been like one or two cars of us going total. So whoever was going to drive, which I don't remember at this point because it's been like freaking 20 years or something by this point, I don't really remember. But what I do remember is, when one of your friends can't go, you're kind of disappointed, but I wasn't like, I don't know how to describe it because I don't want to say I wasn't close to her. She was a grade ahead of me. I saw her every Friday. We didn't have any beef. Um, we went to school together and we had a lot of classes together. Um, but we got along. Like we never like had any bad words between us or anything. And most of my guy friends kind of liked her. She was kind of flirty and stuff, and so I used to be around her a lot because I was hanging out with my guy friends, and she was often around my guy friends because she was crushing on like all of them at one point or another. She had a crush on somebody, so she was almost always around um, at a certain point in time. And so, her dad, says she can't go. She's kind of making a fuss about it. I guess he had told her before we got there. And I'm just thinking, like, well, good thing we started to try to plan tonight because, like, our plans might be a little changed. So the youth group starts, and I don't even remember the topic, but maybe we were talking about Halloween. It's very likely we were talking about Halloween. And by the end of this, discussion, the youth pastor urges us, saying, I really, can't tell you guys what to do. I'm not going to tell your parents not to let you go. Um, but I'm really concerned about this event, and I really don't think it's a good idea. And even if others in the church or others, in your family won't tell you that it's not a good idea, I'm gonna, put my reputation out there and just tell you guys you're young, you're impressionable. I don't know his exact words, but like you're young, you're impressionable, and you might not understand the full weight of what you're deciding to opt into when you're, trying to plan to do things on Halloween. Now, maybe a disclaimer on my end. I know Halloween can be a very conflicting topic for Christian denominations. And so, I'm not here to tell people you need to celebrate Halloween. I'm not here to tell people to like completely ignore it and, don't do a thing about it. Ignore it, close your windows, shut off your lights, lock your doors and stay inside and don't watch horror movies, don't indulge in any of the anything, don't do anything with it. Just don't, you know. So that's kind of what happens. Um, at the youth gathering, he tells us this in his house. We're just sitting in his house on the couches on the floor having this casual conversation, and it wasn't an argument. And we were kind of like, I was kind of like, me and him had this bickering kind of like, he would always play the devil's advocate about certain topics, and I would try to like defend a position. Like we had this kind of like relationship where we can have friendly debates. So he would always say stuff like, "Oh, well, the God of the Bible must be evil because he flooded, the world and killed everybody but Noah and his family and some animals, right?" And like, so it's like that's the topic of debate. It's like you're either on his side or you're like against that position, and so you kind of use like biblical backing to be like, "Oh, yes, I think I agree. God is evil and vindictive," or "No, God is merciful and loving," and so why would he kill all these people and all this kind of. So we would usually have these kind of discussions like this, and it didn't bother me. Some people got bothered by it, but I understood his heart behind it, and he wanted us to think. And so that's why he did that. And some people didn't like it. They wanted to have discussions but not be challenged at all. I loved it. I always enjoyed it. I got a kick out of it. I was always one of the main people like talking because I had so much to say about almost every topic. I loved it so much. And he could kind of tell that I was like into the topics. And so, I'm listening to what he's saying about Halloween because, I'd gone the previous year, and this was also with church people. Like it was a sports league, but it was a sports league run by the church pretty much was sponsoring it, and we knew kids from other churches that went, other Adventist churches that went. So I went, and met a bunch of people that were into soccer, and a lot of us were still like part of the Adventist church. And so, I was like, well, they are from an even stricter church. Like they don't even have drums and they only sing hymns, and like we were allowed to go and nobody's parents said anything, and we were younger then. So I was a little bit confused. And our church usually hosted this harvest festival kind of event. um I don't know if it was usually on Halloween or like the Thursday before Halloween or like 2 days before, back to back or what, but let's say it was usually on Halloween to keep kids from being tempted from trick or treating or going out to horror movies and things like that. They're like, you can wear a costume, but it can't be ghosts or demons or anything violent. It can be like princesses or, like elves or, you know, some kind of character like Smurfs or something. Like it could be something kind of like a fun, lighthearted kind of character. You couldn't show up as like Hellraiser or like anything like that, like Michael Myers, nothing like that. Freddy Krueger, a ghost, a mummy. Like you weren't supposed to be those types of themes. It was supposed to be something like devils, things like that. It had to be something like uplifting. And so you could still wear a costume. They usually had candy. I think when they did it at the school, they would have different classrooms kind of open so you could go door to door and like trick or treat at the certain classroom doors, I think. Um, and they used to have like this maze that was made out of all these boxes that you had to crawl through. And it was like dark in there and stuff, and like you'd have to find your way out. Um, and they'd have little booths where you could like bob for apples or throw darts at a thing or like You know, those little games where you have like a fish bowl where they like have the fish in the water and there's like those little magnetic poles that you use to pull the fish out. They have the little magnet in their mouth and like old school games like that. Probably some board games, probably some a room where there's like some kind of movie being played or something. Um there were like bales of hay, pumpkin carving, little stands where you could get like funnel cakes or pizza or chips or candy, snacks where you like pay for it and stuff. I think there was a raffle maybe every hour for prizes or something. I really don't know. There was a lot going on. Face painting stations and like um, I think one of the bigger events was the dunking tank. I think they had a dunking tank where you'd have to throw the ball and then like if it hit the target, then it dunks somebody. I feel like they had that there because I can't remember any other event. I think they had a moon bounce. They had a zip line. I think they had one of those moon bounces where you stick to the wall or something, like the Velcro or whatever. They must have had stuff out in the back too. I really just can't remember. Like, I haven't been to one of these in a really long time. But basically, the church made like this whole party at the school, at the local like Adventist school, where they could host this full night Halloween event and the community could come in. I think it was free to come in or maybe like $1 or like donation or something. I really don't remember. And there was parking. People would um I think one year when I was older I would like park cars or something or like help people find where they could park. Like we had lights and we were like directing traffic to like park. Um like there were all kinds of games and stuff. And I went for a few years. I liked it because everyone I knew, from church being involved and stuff, people were going. And so I used to go and enjoy myself. It was kind of childish, like once we got older, but we would always volunteer. Like once we kind of aged out of stuff, we would always just volunteer to like help. And so that event was going to be going on anyways. Um, and, you know, So we're wrapping up this youth event. We always wrap up with prayer. So it's not uncommon that they take requests and that like there's anything that we need to pray about, like it's Sabbath, like we just had this discussion and there's a little maybe people were a little disappointed. I don't know. Like I don't think it was heavy. I think everyone was just happy to like see their friends. It was Friday night. Everybody was having a good time for the most part. Next day's Halloween. There's a little bit of energy in the air. We got church in the morning. Like usually it was like it was fun. It was social. Like there wasn't like a lot of drama behind it. But we were kind of bummed a little bit. Like one of us isn't gonna be able to make it, but we're kind of like whatever. It's expected. She's like youth pastor's daughter. Like they're kind of strict, and so we're just kind of like whatever. Um, so the youth pastor's gonna pray, and um, I don't remember exactly if he mentioned this. I think I mentioned it, but it was kind of he was gonna pray right after he mentioned he didn't really want us to go to this event, this not scary farm event. And me being the age that I was, maybe I was 18, I don't know, maybe I was younger. I look over at him and I'm like, well, if we're gonna pray, like why don't we pray to God and see like if God wants us to go to not scary farm or not. And uh, people say that kind of stuff. It's like let's pray about it, let's pray about it. So he prays about it. He puts it into the prayer. That's not the only part of the prayer, but he says some other things and prays about that our eyes will be opened, about this holiday and, that will like gain some wisdom and be shown, what to do or whatever. Now, mind you, the next day's church, so we're all going to see each other again, anyways. That night, Friday night, we all go to our own separate homes. We usually don't stay up too late because we got to be at church by like 9 in the morning. So it's like, okay, got to go to bed kind of on time. So we get home, go to sleep. I'm woken up to an earthquake. Now I get up, you know, I'm like, that was scary. The first thing that runs through my head is, oh shoot, that was God. That was the power of God trying to wake me up to not let me go to Halloween Haunt, or maybe it was called Halloween Haunt. Maybe it wasn't, not Scary Farmer. Those are the same things. But either way, we bought tickets for it, and I was like, this is God telling me not to go. That's the first thing that comes to my mind. I get up out of bed, turn on the light because I'm like scared. So I'm like, I'd rather sleep with the lights on. I come out of my room. I think my brother is like in the hallway too. I don't remember my sister or my parents waking up, but I remember being kind of scared by the earthquake, and I think I slept on the couch. Now I don't know, like you know how it is when you're like a little younger. Like I scare easily, so it's like I can't even hardly watch horror movies anyways. So usually if I watch horror movies, I'm like paranoid for the night, and I'll have to like sleep with the lights on, and I'm all like paranoid, like what's that noise, like what's that sound, like don't want to look in the closet, like if I go to the bathroom, I'm like super hyper vigilant. When I'm leaving my room, I'm like, did I see a shadow, like oh there's something gonna be in here when I turn on the lights, and like open my door slowly and like look around and make sure when I'm going back in my room, like there's nothing like lurking around in the house. Like I freak out easily. That's why I don't watch horror movies. I'm usually I'll lose a night of sleep, and usually by the second night I feel fine. So I already know that it's not for me. And so for some reason, when there was that earthquake, I was a little shook up by it. No pun intended, but I was a little shook up, and I remember sleeping on the couch because there was just a few hours before we had to wake up and go to church, anyways. I slept on the couch, woke up, start getting ready for church. And our youth pastor is also our Sabbath school teacher. Now we have Sabbath school at 9 o'clock until 11 before church starts. And so Sabbath school, we get there, we're on time, we get to the church, and he's there, and he's ready to teach. And he's like, did you decide what you're gonna do? And I was like, yep. He's like, did you get your answer? I think that's how he worded it. He's like, did you get your answer? I'm like, yep. And I was like, yeah, like I think he talked about the earthquake first, mainly like, did you feel the earthquake last night? And I was like, I was kind of like, I didn't even know. I was like at a loss for words. I was just like, I should not be playing with this stuff. Like it, you know. Um, but I've told this story before, and that's my Halloween story. Um, we bought tickets for a major Halloween event in our city in Southern California. We prayed about it because the youth pastor thought it was a bad idea for us to go, even though we'd already purchased the tickets beforehand and were ready to go. The Friday night before the Saturday Halloween event, we have this youth group event, which we always have on Friday nights. And he urges us not to go. I try to be a little bit of a smart aleck, and I tell him, well, if God doesn't want us to go, let's pray about it. He pops it into the prayer, for us to kind of get some kind of an answer on this. And over the night, there's an earthquake. Um, and the next day, we go to church on Halloween day, and I decide I'm not going to this event. Now, my dad hears about this, and he's really encouraging, and he's like, I think it's a really, because it was me and my brother, I forgot about that, me and my brother both had tickets, as well as quite a few of our other friends. So me and my brother decided not to go. I don't know if I've ever talked about this too much with most of my other friends. Um, I might bring it up with them because it was kind of an interesting experience. I know I wasn't just going with me and my brother. I'm pretty sure there were some other friends going. Um, and yeah, there was an earthquake. That night that we'd asked for a sign, there was an earthquake, and to me, that was my answer. That I don't need to be messing with Halloween. Now I don't know. I could try to justify this in like a million different ways. I live in LA. There's earthquakes all the freaking time. I think I've experienced since I've been back since June of 2022. I want to say there's like 3 to 4 earthquakes that I remember happening all at like around 3, between 3 a.m. and like 5 a.m. And it just happened to be that I was awake at those hours and experienced those weird earthquakes. Um, and you know, so it is kind of it's not something that like never happens. Like I've experienced at least 4 of them this over the last year and a half. And so we do get earthquakes quite a bit. I just think that a lot of times when they're happening, we're out and about, or we're driving around, or we're busy, or we're sleeping. And so, like, usually if it's not a big earthquake and you're walking around or moving around, you're not really gonna notice it much. Like one Easter, there was an earthquake, and we have this little like chandelier with these little glass pieces that each hang by one little like peg, so they kind of swing when you move them, and it would swing. It was swinging. I remember standing looking at it, and it was swinging. Now it's kind of interesting. This isn't even on topic, but it's kind of interesting that that earthquake happened on the same Easter. That was the first Easter where we ever had an actual ham. Like like if you know Adventists aren't known for eating pork. Adventists aren't really too big into Sunday services that have to do with Easter. Like they might do like a Friday sunrise service or like something on Saturday, something on Friday, but usually on Sunday everybody stays home. They don't even go to church on Sunday even for Easter. If they do anything, they might have like an Easter egg hunt or like a picnic or something, but they don't go to church. They don't have a service. They don't hold church services. So we're always home on Easter Day. And, if you know Adventism, they're very strongly against pork, eating meat in general, but pork in particular. Um, they talk about all the time that you're not supposed to eat pork because of the commandment that talks about just different types of foods. They've embraced that commandment, and you're not allowed traditionally to really eat it. And that Easter, when there was that earthquake, we were having ham. That was the first time I remember in our household ever eating ham. Um, and I don't know. I can't really say that there was an earthquake because of the ham, but that's the first thing that came to my mind. Um, and this must have happened after the Not Scary Farm thing. Um, I think I was quite a bit older at this point, but in my head, I was like, oh, it's because we're serving pork on Easter. But so many people eat pork on Easter. Like, it's very common that people eat ham on Easter. But it's when you're raised in a certain religion, you kind of start thinking certain ways about things. Um, but it's kind of strange. Like, I have this kind of connection to certain parts of nature, like earthquakes, the ocean, different stuff like that. But I'm not saying that I like cause earthquakes or whatever, or that God speaks to me through earthquakes. Like, I can't definitively say that. but I can say that more than once I've been awake um, right before an earthquake happens, and kind of not like right before, like immediately before, but awake, and just kind of had the idea in my mind, "Oh, I'm just gonna stay up. Maybe I should just stay up." Um, because sometimes that's really when I want to study certain stuff is like early in the morning, even though I'd rather be sleeping too. It's like there's no one to text. Nobody's texting me at 3 a.m. No one's awake in the house hardly ever. Um, there's nobody out, usually there's nothing to distract me. So usually it's a peaceful time where I can just study or whatever. Um, but yeah, there are some times when I do wake up and, I just kind of have this mindset of like, I'm going to stay up a little bit and then here comes a little earthquake. But that's happened a few times. But also, Southern California has quite a few earthquakes. I've experienced multiple earthquakes in my life. And they're usually small ones. I haven't experienced like a whole lot of huge ones. They're usually pretty small, but they're all scary because you never know when they're going to get stronger. Like sometimes they get light and then they get a little, like they pick up a little heavier. And then you're like, okay, hopefully it just like dies down. But you never know. It might just keep getting stronger and stronger. So, that's my Halloween earthquake story. I've also told that other Easter earthquake story before too. But I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think? I mean, it doesn't matter what you think. It doesn't matter what I think. I'm probably not gonna fully share what I think about that right now. But I have my opinions on it. Um, I can say that almost every time that I've been encouraged, or almost every time that I have said that I wanted to test, you know, I haven't done it often, but almost every time that I've put out a test, you know, to test some kind of reality of God, I've gotten some kind of creepy answer. So the Halloween one was one answer. I had this other experience that I'll explain real quick. Um, I don't know if I've explained it on here. I probably have, but it wasn't that long ago. It was at least 2020 or I can't remember which laptop. I feel like it was my work laptop, so I think it was 2020. It was at least 2020. I don't remember honestly, but it was. I'm pretty sure it was 2020 or after, because that's when I started working remotely, and I had a work laptop, so I could work from home. And I don't know what I had been doing that night or that day. Um, I want to say I was studying something. I might have been studying something biblical or studying something like anti-biblical, because sometimes I do study stuff that's like against what you know Bible teaching traditions teach. Like I'll listen to certain people. Like there's this one rabbi that I'm blanking on his name, but he's really popular. He's got kind of got like a square shaped head, really full lips. His hair is kind of like curly and like gray with some black in it, and he knows the New Testament really, really, really good. And he's Jewish and talks about, um, all of what Jewish rabbis see as misconceptions. Um, about the life of Jesus and things like that. So sometimes I study stuff like that. And I can't remember if I was studying something like that. It wouldn't have been his content because I'm new to his content, relatively new to it. It would have been someone else, some other content or a book or a website, or maybe I was actually studying something, biblical. I really don't recall. But either way, I was studying something or doing something where, in my mind, I was thinking, um, something along the lines of, I think I was meditating. I think I was meditating or praying by this point. I think I was meditating or praying, but I had been studying something, and I remember feeling like I wanted to like pray or meditate, and I had, I think, I don't remember exactly what I said, but I was like, trying to ask God for a sign, just kind of like, are you real? I need like a sign. Or maybe I was doubting, and maybe I was like, I don't think God's real. Like, I never get any kind of sign. Like, and right as that kind of thought kind of passed by, um, I hear the Windows tune on my work laptop. Like, that tune of like that din din or whatever it does when it turns on, by itself, unprovoked. Like, I had not touched this laptop in hours. Probably within the day, I hadn't even touched it, and it was all the way on the desk across the room. And that sound of Windows restarting itself had just occurred as I was, having this prayer about wanting a sign. Now, these types of stories, I don't really tell them to be like, oh, like, I get like signs or like whatever. I'm not like boasting about it. I think it's creepy. Like, to me, it scares me. It scares me. I don't like it. I hardly ever talk about it. I don't even know if I should talk about it. It's kind of one of those things that's like, do you even talk about this kind of stuff? Like, I don't even know if you're supposed to talk about it. Like, um, I did a sermon once way back. Um, I did a sermon once way back recently. Not recently. I did a sermon once way back. Um, about that Halloween story, and it was maybe like the year after it happened. That was the sermon I told, and I think I was preaching about Gideon. Um, I don't even remember the story of Gideon. Gideon, was that the one where they put like the cloth at night or something to see if it would be wet around it or whatever? Asking for a sign, and asked like a few times and got the sign exactly on point, like a few nights in a row or something, and still was kind of doubtful. I can very much relate to that story, but I don't know. Like, I don't want to like put ideas into people's heads. You guys know how I am. I'm on here. I say whatever I say, and you guys can make of it what you want to make. I'm not going to tell you what to think. There are multiple angles that these types of stories can take. Either it's all coincidence, which is easy to think. It's easy to it's easy to write something off and be like it's all coincidence. But to me, it's kind of like a weird thing when it's like coinciding exactly within less than 24 hours, you're getting a sign when you ask for a sign. Um, and I mean, I don't really know what to say about the stuff with like the pork and all that kind of stuff. Like, I don't know. I've eaten ham before. Like, we've had ham in the house more than that one time, but we don't usually have a lot of pork around that often. But Um, I think I remember one Christmas. I think this past Christmas we had pork. I think we had ham another time, and then that Easter. So I want to say we've had 3 holidays maybe where we had ham or pork or something like that. Um, on purpose. But we still eat. Sometimes we'll get those like McDonald's breakfast meals with the like bacon and the sausage. It's pork. Um, we're not like completely like my dad never touches the stuff. We don't eat it a lot. I would say the most I eat it is through McDonald's, and other than that, that's probably like the only thing I like is the McDonald's sausage McMuffins. That's probably the only pork other than chashu pork and ramen. Um, I just have such an aversion towards it just because of how it was raised. Just how it's salty all the time, and um, it, I don't know. To me, it's not an attractive meat. Like ever since I learned that pigs don't have sweat glands, then whenever I eat pork, because it's usually super salty, I feel some kind of way about it because I think, oh, like it's salty because of their sweat or something. And so it just grosses me out and I can't really eat it. But I mean, I'll eat it. I'm not like that messed up about it. But um, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. It's easy to say that something's a coincidence. It's easy to say that something is a sign. It's easy to say that, you know, I mean, these things do happen. Earthquakes happen. Unprovoked, they happen. Or, every so often, if you have a Windows laptop that's kind of glitchy, every so often that thing is going to restart itself and reset and start trying to update without your permission. Kind of like your iPhone. If you keep it plugged in and on Wi Fi overnight, it's going to update. Like, eventually, some of these devices just update. So it's like, but that computer wasn't updating so regularly like that it was like, oh, it does this like every few days. I mean, it just happened right at the same time when I was like in that thought process. So I don't know. These are probably the scariest stories that I have. I have some other ones, but to me, this kind of stuff is scary. Like messing with you know deities and you know spiritual beings and stuff. To me, that is more scary than you know anything else. Like that you kind of have some kind of connection for it to potentially connect to you or respond in any way. It's like that scares the crap out of me. Um, but in a way, it's a little comforting. But at the same time, you know, I I don't want to just say every single thing in life is a coincidence. I do not believe that fully. There's some things that I'm just like, to me, I know what that was. Um, like I think that you know, um, I'll put it this way: I didn't create myself, right? And I see, I'd say after working in the field of psychology, I have seen too many human patterns of things to say that I think that there isn't any type of design with things. Like, I'll give you an example. Um, the clinic I worked at for a long time had about 600 clients. Now, of the majority of those clients, you know, most of them had some form of PTSD. They weren't always diagnosed with it, but a lot of them, when you started talking to them, you're like, yeah, they've got trauma. they've got a traumatic history. They kind of still have reactions to it and stuff, but it's not like all the time for everybody. Almost all of them, not almost all of them, but a lot of them had symptoms of psychosis. Um, a lot of them self medicated with meth, and for some of them, there was psychosis after that point. For others, some of the psychosis appeared to be more like a trauma response. Almost every single one of the clients I had was currently in poverty and was also raised in poverty. The more we learned about their histories, I started learning themes, just noticing themes. None of these people's parents had money, or at least the majority of them weren't raised with money, you know, like couldn't afford to go to private school. Parents maybe didn't speak English, couldn't afford medical care. Some of their parents couldn't afford to even feed them or weren't like well enough off in their minds to like take care of their own kids. A lot of them experienced abuse in their youth. A lot of them had problems in school that were, I can't say it was intellectual only. It could have been stemming from the lifestyle that they were exposed to. Um, and a lot of them had issues in school. Now, I gathered this information just from talking to them for so long. I kind of started realizing, okay, this is the extent that poverty can get to. Poverty can relate to things like trauma, psychosis, depression, anxiety, um, fibromyalgia. A lot of these clients, I've worked with older populations, and a lot of these older populations had a lot of severe, COPD, diabetic issues, a whole lot of other like health concerns later on in life. And most of this, if you trace almost for everybody, you trace it back, it almost always, at least with these people, specifically these people, um, there was always that pattern. There was that history of being raised in poverty and having trauma from that, from not having the best of school experiences. Therefore, once they got older, their work experiences weren't really going that well. Most of them didn't go to a lot of college, um, and a lot of them needed disability or were on disability. So that's kind of how I'd explain it. I know it's not the same exact thing that I'm talking about here, but I mean, there are so many patterns to things that I think when you do something long enough, you kind of realize certain patterns. And I definitely noticed them with the client care that I was providing in the past. But I don't know, when it comes to all these other things, you know, sometimes people want to say, oh, that's not a pattern. That's not a, that's nothing. It's just a coincidence. It would almost be like me saying, in the field of psychology, oh, it's just a coincidence that the majority of my clients had this pattern. Like, is that a coincidence? Like, I don't know. There's got to be something to it, right? Now I'm not even telling you like every story that I have. I've only talked about a few of them, and I've talked about them multiple times on this podcast, but I haven't talked about every story. I've only talked about a handful of them, the ones that I'm kind of more comfortable sharing. Um, but I don't know, you know. It's easy to say that something's just a coincidence. Um, it's something that I'm not willing to really replicate and play around with this stuff enough to replicate it and find out, how many answers can I get, you know, like Gideon or whoever it was. I'm not trying to like test anything to the point where it's like, it's already scary enough as it is. So, I don't know. But you guys can make up your own minds for what you think things are, for what you think it is. Um, you know, yeah, I would say I know. I think I know what it is. At least for myself, that's what it is. I don't care if anybody believes me or if they even agree. That really has no bearing on how I believe about certain stuff. You know, if it's my own firsthand experiences, it's kind of like, all right, it's just what it is. But yeah, hopefully you guys find it thought provoking. Um, I don't know, like it's interesting stuff, but I don't have all the answers, and I do believe that if you look for answers, you find them. Um, in whichever direction you're kind of looking. So, uh, you can do with that what you will. But um, I don't know. Sometimes you just know something, and just because I know something for me doesn't mean that other people have to know it for them. You know, like I said this to somebody before, and I do stand by it. I think there's plenty of space for people to be far apart on things, to not have the same beliefs, to not have the same outlook on life, to not have the same interests, um, to not, none of us have the same experiences, so we're not going to be the same person. Um, but there's definitely value in our differences and in the ways we see the world and in the way we look at things. And, I think, it's good to challenge everything. It's good for me to even challenge how I was raised. It's good to deconstruct things, deconstruct and then reconstruct, on a regular basis. And it's also okay to be firm in your beliefs. You don't have to always, like some things once you solidify, it's solidified, or at least for that point in time, it's solid. And you don't have to make more of it than just that. But yeah, um, so that's what I have to say for my second Halloween story. The story was actually the one about the Halloween earthquake. Wasn't I wasn't really expecting to go into the other ones, but I've told all these stories before, so none of it's brand new. But I hope you found it interesting. All right, guys.